own people.
Now, while the White House certainly has its viewpoint, there are others who feel like this may not have been the right call. Let me take you to Twitter. This is the Twitter of California Congressman Adam Schiff. He says Bashar al-Assad's chemical weapons attack against his own people merited a strong international response. These attacks must not be tolerated, however morally justified. The strikes also risk serious escalation. Absent congressional authorization, they are also on thin legal ground. Now, the fact is they're frankly on solid legal ground as long as the post-9/11 AUMF remains intact. And as you can well imagine, there is still other criticism internationally, folks from Tehran and from Moscow in particular. Of course, I'll bring you any more details as I get them, guys, but for now, back to you.
All right, Kevin, live at the White House. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin.
And now we'll bring in Sean Spicer, former White House press secretary, to responses to this as well. Sean, thanks for being here. Forgive me, I can't recall if you were at the podium when the first attack happened or not, but even if you weren't, you're familiar with the first time the Trump administration enforced Obama's red line that was not enforced. Bring us inside this decision and how the president comes to it.
As you recall, we were present last time we fired him off when the president was meeting down at Mar-a-Lago. The president convened his team down in the in a secure facility down there, and we watched the airstrikes. This time, last night, was bold and decisive, and I think accomplished two really important goals. One, it sent a very strong signal that the United States, President Trump, won't tolerate these kind of atrocities. But more importantly, I think these strikes in particular at these three sites will degrade and undermine the ability of Syria to either reconstitute, research, or deploy chemical weapons further on its people. That was very important going forward. But also, the president called out Iran and Russia and any other actor that will continue to support and align themselves and enable such a heinous regime.
Sean, let me ask you, when the president campaigns on saying we've got no business in Syria, and now as the commander-in-chief assumes that grave responsibility, what is going to happen next, in your opinion, whether it be a consideration of further action or really a larger strategy?
Well, I think that's an important distinction, because there's a big difference between deploying troops and putting a ground presence there and having very limited targeted airstrikes that undermine the ability for Syria to either research, engage, or deploy chemical weapons further on its people. Doing limited strikes with our coalition partners and sending a strong signal to those who enable them is one thing. Sending in troops for a long-term mission is quite another. I think right now the president's picked the perfect strategy. He's threading that needle perfectly, and obviously you see the reaction not just domestically in a bipartisan fashion, but internationally. There is a very strong coalition of the willing that shares that feeling with us.
All right. Well, of course, Syria is the most important story of the morning, Sean. But while you're here, I want to get your take. As you know, there is a book coming out early this next week. James Comey has a lot of nuggets that we've read, a lot of them personal, about his feelings about President Trump. But in one of those nuggets that I was reading, he takes a hit at the PR team and their focus so much on Russia and making sure that the public didn't see it as Russian collusion, that there wasn't a focus on how we handle it moving forward. I'll read this to you. It says the president-elect and his team shifted immediately into a strategy session about messaging on Russia. The Trump team, led by Priebus, Spicer, and Trump, jumping in, debated how to position these findings for maximum political advantage. Your reaction?
Well, that's just not accurate. And both Comey's description there in the book is misleading, and then CNN's reporting are entirely inaccurate. What happened? That meeting was long and robust. People like Tom Bossert, Mike Flynn, the vice president, asked a series of questions throughout that briefing to the intel team, which included two Obama political appointees that were there to talk about it. And as you recall, there was a bit of tension going in because of a lot of the leaks. So as the meeting wrapped up, Director Comey said to the president, "Can I speak with you privately and share something with you?" The president got up. They moved to the back of the room with Director Comey. The rest of us walked out of the room to give them the room. At that time, we compared notes. We knew there was a massive media audience downstairs waiting for reaction. We asked them, we shared with them what we were going to say, and we asked them how they were going to characterize the meeting. We wanted to make sure that that we were aligned and that we didn't cross any classification issues or anything that was inappropriate. And that was simply the nature of this. There had been some tension clearly leading up to that because of some concerns that Obama appointees in the intelligence community were leaking information. And we wanted to make sure that we're all on the same page coming out of that meeting. But it was Director Comey who actually got up and said, "Can I speak with you privately?" CNN later reported that the president was shown a 2-page document which laid out a bunch of these. That's entirely false. It never happened. In fact, Director Comey himself confirms that. So the CNN reporting about that meeting is both false as well as Director Comey's misleading comments about the nature of that meeting. But the idea that we weren't going to have some kind of idea of touching gloves and saying, is it okay if we say the following? There's obviously a ton of media interest in this meeting. Would have been malpractice had we not done that.
Was there a concern and was there an effort at that time by your team and the administration to make sure that there were steps being taken, that Russia didn't continue to do this in elections to come? Can you hit back at some of those claims by James Comey?
Well, remember, I mean, this is important. So there are 4 people that came up to brief us. 2 of them, the CIA director and the director of national intelligence, were Obama appointees. They were both being replaced by Trump appointees. So the idea, our goal at that point was to get a briefing on the report that was being issued that next day by those folks, not to create a strategy. They were coming up to merely brief us. We had our incoming team there, whether it was Mike Flynn at the National Security Advisor, Tom Bossert, the Homeland Security Advisor, Director Mike Pompeo, who was the designee for the CIA, Vice President Mike Pence was there, a member of the National Security Council. The idea wasn't to create a strategy. They came up very clearly to come in and brief us. They were briefing both President-elect Trump and President Obama. It wasn't a strategy meeting. That was not the intent of the meeting by their admission themselves. So the idea that we would have some kind of follow-on strategy meeting on Russia is ridiculous. That wasn't the point of it. And the idea that we would have a follow-on meeting with appointees from the Obama administration that were on their way out is further ridiculous. What our team talked about afterwards, I'm not going to divulge, but I will say that on its face, what Director Comey describes doesn't even make sense as far as what the purpose of the meeting was. At the end of that meeting, yes, we did describe, after Director Comey had asked the president to step aside, what we wanted to compare our statement. That was it. The idea was some kind of strategy session is hardly accurate.
Well, we'll all get our hands on that book soon. We'd love to have you back as more comes out. I mean, you were there. You were behind the scenes.
Right.
You got the information,
It's
Sean
great
Spicer.
to get your perspective, Sean.
Thanks, Sean.
We appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Well, those Tomahawk missiles blasted at Syria's chemical